1. Don't use electric lights. 2. Don't stay close to animals. 3. Don't have to take anything that was close to
They
them.
get into your
4.
body, they infect your
Don't hurt them.
mind, they take the
5.
most valuable thing
Never
in your
ever
life.
name the
Your
evil
body
by
is
its
no
name.
longer your body.
6.
They get
Don't
into
shoot
your
them with
body, they
firearms.
infect your mind,
7.
they take the most
Don't be
valuable
afraid
thing
of
in your
dying.
life. Your body is no longer your
1.
body.
Don't use electric lights.
They get into your body,
2.
they infect your mind.
Don't stay close
they
to
take
animals.
the most
Lucifer.
valuable
3.
thing in your
Azrael.
life. Your
Don't have to
body
take
is no
anything
longer
that
your
was close to
body.
them. Lucifer.
They get
4.
into your body,
Azrael.
they
Don't
infect
hurt
your
them.
mind. They take
Beelzebub.
the most
5.
valuable thing in your
Never
life.
ever
Your
name the
body is no
evil
longer
by
your
its name.
body.
Beelzebub. 6. Don't shoot them with firearms. 7. Don't be afraid of dying. Evil likes children, and children like evil. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Horror Podcast. I'm Shawn.
I'm John.
And I'm Missy.
And we have a in-depth discussion today that will involve Demián Rugna, who I feel like his name is on a lot of lips right now because when Evil Lurks hit Shudder about a month ago, maybe, John and I saw it at Beyond Fest back in, I guess that was early October or late September. And so we're going to compare and contrast that film with his previous film, Terrified. But before we do that, guys, how you doing?
Good.
Good. How are you guys?
Pretty good. Let's, Missy, have you seen anything other than these two movies? You seen anything recently that you want to talk about?
I recently watched The Belko Experiment from 2016. I had never seen it before. I don't know how I had never seen it before because I love survival horror movies like that, things in the vein of like Battle Royale or The Hunger Games, stuff like that. And it was written by James Gunn and directed by Greg McLean. I had heard of it for years. But I don't think I even realized that it was a survival horror movie, and I just kind of forgot about it. It's only about an hour and a half, and it's super, super, super intense. It hits the ground running and never stops. Within about 5-10 minutes, you're in, because the basic premise is 80 American employees get locked inside this office building. They work in Bogota, Colombia, I think. And one day they're at work and a voice comes on the intercom and tells them that you've got 30 minutes to kill 2 people or you're gonna experience consequences. And then we're, gonna see what's going on. They don't do it. And then they see what happens. And the next time the voice comes on, it tells them that they have to kill 30 people within 2 hours or 60 of them will be killed. Begin. And it goes from there. It's the building seals up with steel plates and you've got 80 terrified people closed in. And then where most of the other movies in this vein, like Battle Royale or The Hunger Games or The Running Man, any of that stuff, it usually lasts over a period of time, like over days. This doesn't. It's condensed into about 8 hours. When the voice comes on the intercom, the first thing it says to them is, in 8 hours, most of you will be dead. And it goes from there. It had awesome performances. It has a weird sense of humor. It's super bloody, good practical effects, and it's on Tubi for free for anybody who wants to check it out. I loved it. It's one of the coolest things I've seen in a while.
John, have you seen this?
I haven't, no. It sounds kind of interesting, but Missy, I definitely would trust your take on this one.
Yeah, I really, really liked it. It was one of those that as soon as I finished it, I ordered a physical copy that is on the way.
Nice.
Because Tubi is not ideal. It breaks into tense moments with ridiculous ads. I'm convinced somebody at Tubi has whoever programs the ads has a weird sense of humor because they always seem to come in at the weirdest times. Like something super fucking intense, and then you'll get an ad for, Viagra or something.
Yeah. So I just realized, so you said written by James Gunn and directed by Don McLean, and I was like, how do I know? Or I'm sorry, Greg
No,
McLean.
Greg McLean. Don
Uh,
McLean was the guy who sang American Pie.
Yeah, I know that.
Greg McLean.
Was Greg McLean Wolf Creek?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And Rogue, which with that
Yeah.
giant
Oh.
alligator movie.
Yeah, I just rewatched that not long ago. I didn't realize it was the same guy. Yeah, apparently originally James Gunn was supposed to direct it, but he didn't want it was too dark. He didn't want to stay there for months, like in that story. So he wrote it, but he didn't direct it.
Interesting cast. I saw this, but I really, well, I think I saw this in Mayhem around the same time, so I cannot. They're so
Okay.
similar. I can't get them apart.
Okay. They are, but they're not. They're both really good movies, but Mayhem has more of a sense of humor. This is really brutal and a bit mean. Mayhem has like a rebellious, snarky, sarcastic vibe to it that this doesn't have.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're really different, similar premises, but really different movies. Both good.
It's funny that John C. McGinley is in this movie.
Oh, there's a ton of people too that I mean, some have longer parts than others, but Michael Rooker, you see David Desmelchin, Tony Goldwyn. There are a couple other people that you'll recognize their faces, but they're the ones that I noticed right off the bat.
It's the Gunn has people he uses repeatedly, Rooker and his brother Sean Gunn, and yeah, so that's cool. I gotta watch this again. I'm glad you put this back on my radar. I forgot all about this movie.
You'll like it. I think you'll like this one.
I know I liked it when I watched it. I don't know. I just don't remember it. Cool. Belko Experiment, 2016.
I think you can also rent it on Prime without ads for like $3.
John, what have you seen? Anything of note?
Actually, seriously, I just remembered something, and it's absolutely bonkers.
Ooh.
And I totally failed to mention it on the roundup I did on the latest This Movie Saved My Life podcast. So I'm going to drop it here because it's perfect. Last week, so just a little context. Just recently, I've just been contracted for another book, book number 3, and it's by a publisher named Bloomsbury Press. And it's basically it's based on the class that I'm going to be teaching at Occidental next semester, Los Angeles and film. And so I was going on like a little kick where I wanted to rewatch and take some notes on depictions of LA in genre movies from the 90s, preferably not Escape from LA. So I watched Roger Donaldson's 1995 film Species, starring Natasha Henstridge. And this movie is absolutely terrible. It's so bad. But yet it was oddly watchable. This movie is the premise is alien intelligence beams to Earth the code to clone and create through DNA a being that's sort of similar to them but in human form, and that essentially grows up to be Natasha Henstridge. The scientists who create this person deem it to be too dangerous, tries to destroy it. And then it escapes from the lab and goes out there in the world and ends up in LA, where it pursues it's basically essentially as if the Terminator from 1984 was not a robot, but an alien in a female human form, and whose mission was not to kill a single person, but to mate and destroy the world through her spawns. And this is just like an absolute. It was kind of, it was one of those films that I feel was conceived as a softcore porno movie for Cinemax or Showtime, but yet somehow acquired a big budget and some big names. It's also got Ben Kingsley, Michael Madsen, and Forrest Whitaker, who plays. All of these people here are trying to track down the alien, and Forrest Whitaker plays this spiritual medium who goes to like the locations where she's been and is like, she was here. She wanted to, she was scared. She wanted to mate. And they give all the funniest lines to Michael Madsen, of course. And there's so many interesting uses of LA locations that people are familiar with other films, like Union Station. The hotel from True Romance plays a big role in this film, and Hollywood Hills and Palisades locations are crucial to this film as well. But it is just bad. Like the alien Giger was involved with the creature effects, but they're not that memorable at all. Like, and they very rarely appear until like towards the end. It has one of the lamest fake your own death scenes ever committed to film. And it's just this film sucks, but boy is it watchable. And this was part of a bunch of films that I rented from Vidiots. This wasn't an Amazon Prime purchase, although I imagine it's probably available. If anywhere, it would be Amazon Prime. And $2, from Vidiots. It's like, for, a Wednesday night to blow off some steam. You could do a lot worse.
Oh, what? So this is Roger Donaldson. I'm like, how do I know that name? Talk about having a run in the 90s, because
Yeah.
it's like all these movies I've not seen, but I know of, right? So The Bounty, Marie, No Way Out, Cocktail, Cadillac Man, White Sands, The Getaway, Species, Dante's Peak, 13 Days, The Recruit. I mean, it just keeps going.
Damn.
I think this is on Hulu. I've seen
I think so too.
the thumbnail for this. Since 1995, and it's definitely, you can tell Giger's involved, or they imitated Giger. I think it wasn't until like 5 years ago, somebody I know that was a proponent for the film was like, no, Giger was involved. So it kind of put it on my radar, but I have not taken the plunge yet.
I mean, this was kind of pre-internet. So it's like, I think back then when it came out, if I remember clearly, it catered to horny teenage guys that like obviously didn't have the internet to go to,
Right.
and it kind of came out around the same time as Paul Verhoeven's Showgirls and several other like erotic 90s films. Just as a side note, for more on these types of films, I couldn't recommend more Karina Longworth's You Must Remember This podcast and her recent series on erotic 90s. She doesn't go into Species, thank goodness, but she does kind of go into like films that are tangentially related to it. So it was just kind of, in my mind, I remember it less as a sci-fi film and more as part of like that whole constellation of like softcore mid 90s movies that were trying to ride the crest of that wave that was like Showgirls, Indecent Proposal, and Disclosure, and all of that.
What's the famous the Verhoeven movie that uses all the Lords of Acid music with
Basic Instinct.
Yeah.
Right?
There you go.
Yeah. So it's kind of in my memory vacuum, it's kind of part in the same kind of part of the same like series of cycles of films that had that particular sort of almost softcore porn edge to them. Because let's be frank, it as a sci-fi film, it fails miserably. So you might as well just think of it as that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. Because I'm thinking about it, like, wow, the '90s actually there was like a lot of like ooh, erotic thrillers, or
Yeah.
erotic this, erotic that, and like of course, like it just as you pointed out, it's like predates the internet, and all, like look at what was the oh God, I've made fun of it enough. There was like Red Shoe Diaries and I
Yeah.
forget what else, but there was like a whole career path basically making erotic, quote unquote, softcore. I mean, Skinamax. That's a reason. There's a reason that's like a colloquialism for Cinemax, right?
Sure.
Wow,
I mean, I think
Species.
that's where I had seen Species. I saw it when I was a teenager on cable at like 3 in the morning
There you
because it
go.
had
Yeah.
Michael Manson in it.
Even the
That
cable
sounds right.
programmers knew. Oh, we want to save this one for about 3 in the morning.
Yeah, it was on at
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was looking for something to watch, and it had Michael Madsen in it, and I liked him from Reservoir Dogs, so and it
Yeah.
was like a monster movie. It's not a good monster, but I mean, it's a good movie for 2 o'clock in the morning after you've you know had a few beers or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
it's cheesy and stupid, but it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to
Oh
check
yeah.
this out. I'll definitely have to check this out. Species, Roger Donaldson. Wow, way to go, Roger Donaldson. Talk about owning a decade. I still don't think I'm going to see any of those movies, but I mean, other than Species, you've sold me on Species. I don't know about the sequels. Have you seen any of the sequels, you guys?
Uh-uh.
No.
No.
Uh-uh.
It looked like at least in the second one, Madsen came back. So, but I mean, I'm sure they were. Uh, yeah, I'm sure they were like, here's a briefcase filled with money. Um, so I have not seen a lot, but I will say I finally watched on Screambox. Uh, okay, so like a year or two ago, I believe it was Severin Films got the rights. They dug out this regional flick called Night of the Demon. It's a Bigfoot movie, and they put out not only the movie but a novelization. I bought both. I had not watched the movie to this day. I haven't even opened the Blu-ray. I read the novelization last year. It was fine, but I had at some point after buying the movie seen I had watched a scene of it on YouTube, and I was like, oh man, I don't know. I'll wait. Anyway, I finally watched it. Uh, this movie, a lot of people, seems like a lot of people really were looking forward to this. They're like, oh my God, there's a scene where Bigfoot rips this guy's dick off. It's fucking incredible, blah, blah, blah. I got to tell you, I'm not going to say don't give it a once over, but I didn't really care. The novelization's way better. But the funny thing is the novelization is like, this movie's from 1980. The novelization came out 2 years ago. So like Severin contracted a current writer to novel. And that seems to be something they've been doing too. But yeah, it's just not great. I mean, yeah, I look at Letterboxd, a lot of people are like, oh, this is fucking incredible. I'm not saying they're wrong. Just for me, I don't know. I didn't really care for it. So
Yeah, that's a shame.
not to be confused with Night of the Demons.
Which you told me about this, and that's what. I'm like, wait, you've seen Night of the Demons? What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's such a weird title for a fucking Bigfoot movie. It's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's bizarre. I don't know. Anyway, what else? Miss, you got anything else?
I watched Kill Theory the other night. I rented it on Prime. I'm in a survival horror kick to get through the holidays. And it's directed by Chris Moore, who I wasn't familiar with. And the basic premise is it's about a group of college kids that get terrorized at like this vacation home in the middle of nowhere by this madman who he was on the news. He had just gotten out of the facility he was in. This dude had been mountain climbing, had an accident, and chose to sacrifice his 3 friends to save himself. So now he's terrorizing this group of friends to prove that anybody would make the choice he does or he did. So he forces them to play a game of, let's kill each other to survive. The premise sounds cool, but when you get there, the acting isn't very good. The characters were unlikable, and I just wanted to see them die. So it's not horrible or unwatchable, but I don't really recommend it. There's a lot of other things in this genre that if you're interested in, give your time to what something like Belko Experiment or Battle Royale, The Hunger Games, The Running Man. There's a lot of stuff out there, and this was just kind of a time waster. But
Okay.
yeah, I don't mind renting it or like I'm fine with supporting indies. I want to support those movies. This one was fine. It's nothing spectacular, but it's not awful.
Okay.
I'll
Fair
give it a
enough.
fine.
Okay.
Watch Belko Experiment instead.
John, you got another one?
There was one that there was one that I actually rewatched
Mm-hmm.
that I remember wasn't very good. And this was several weeks ago, and I just never failed to mention it. Have either of you ever seen a film? It's either an Australian film or it's just a film that's set in Australia with Martin Freeman from the Hobbit stories called Cargo.
No, but I've heard of it. I think it was on Netflix forever.
Yeah, same. I haven't seen it, but I heard of it.
It still is on Netflix.
Okay.
I definitely recommend checking it out. Let me know what you think of
Okay.
it. It's a survival, and because Missy, you brought it to mind when you said the sort of survival horror and being on a survival horror kick. This is a survival horror story, and it's an epidemic destroys Australia, creates zombies. So it's kind of like a 28 Days Later set in the Australian outback.
Oh.
Martin Freeman, he's on a boat. It's sort of going down Australia. So it's like an Australian 28 Days Later meets kind of like a Heart of Darkness kind of story.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I'm in. You said Cargo on Netflix?
Cargo. It came out 2017.
Okay.
John, I wanted to ask, so you said a new episode of your podcast with Miles Fortune just dropped, correct? This movie saved my life. What's the new episode?
Yeah, it's called Miles Watches the Big Lebowski for the first time. We were chatting and we had just recently done a Halloween episode, and then we did one on David Fincher's new film, The Killer. We compared it to Jean-Pierre Melville's The Samurai. We're kind of gearing up for a Christmas episode, but we're kind of planning something in between. And he said, yeah, can we maybe like change the pace, something like a little bit more lighthearted? And I said, yeah, we could always do like another Alien film segment, that we do on our podcast, and do an episode on the Big Lebowski. And he's like, I've never seen the Big Lebowski. It's like, what? You've never seen the Big Lebowski? It's like, I was like, okay, we are doing it, and we are kind of making the fact that you're seeing it for the very first time the primary focus here.
That's awesome.
I love the Big Lebowski so fucking
Me too.
much.
Yeah, it's a good episode. It's like normally I don't say, oh yeah, my episodes are so great. I think I like them all, and they're all kind of good for their own reasons. Right. This one I had quite a bit of fun doing, I have to say.
Nice. Yeah, your podcast is fantastic.
I don't want to keep us too much from our two movies tonight, but you just reminded me, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit more on another episode. But I actually did watch several weeks ago, and this was Tina's recommendation. I did watch Fall House of Usher, and I really liked it, like a lot.
Awesome.
So, yeah. Shout out to the Halloween episode for Horror Vision for really kind of pushing me, pardon the pun, ushering me towards watching it, because I'd been meaning to watch it. And then because I like, Michael Flanagan, I love Dr. Sleep, I love Haunting a Hill House. So this was, when I watched Fall House of Usher, I was like, yeah, Mike Flanagan, he did it again.
He did it again. I can't wait to see what he does now in, with Amazon behind him. I mean, not that I'm one giant corporation's the same as another, maybe, but yeah, I think, they wooed him over there after Netflix kind of did him dirty with the show I haven't finished.
The Midnight Club.
That's it. So
Yeah.
I think they both have something to prove. So I expect good things. But all right, let's talk Demián fucking Rugna, because I got to tell you guys, rewatching these two movies over the last 2 days, I've now seen When Evil Lurks 3 times, and I think I've seen Terrified 4.
Okay.
I don't love Terrified. I think When Evil Lurks, I think, might be the movie of the decade. I know it's a little early to say that, but like it gives me the feels that The Void gave me in the 2010s. Like I just watch it and I'm literally in complete awe the entire time I'm watching it. So I'm not sure how the intent here is. I really wanted to kind of get a feel for how you guys. So let's start with Terrified, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and then there's a progression from that film to this film that we'll talk about. So John, talk about, had you seen Terrified before this?
No.
What did you think?
I liked it. I didn't love it, but in some ways that's kind of besides the point, actually. And I'll tell you why, because one of the things that I love about experiencing horror from other countries, other national cinemas, is the way they defamiliarize the genre. It makes something that you're familiar with seem like very similar. You recognize sameness in Hollywood horror, American horror, yet something different. And it's within that experience that you start to understand new things about the subject being talked about. And this is a film, and we'll get into the basic plot in a moment, I guess, but just in a very general sense, this is a film that is about urban legends and paranormal activities. And we've seen many films that touch upon those subjects, but he's doing it in a new way. And it kind of, the whole time I was watching it, I was thinking, this is with the whole urban legends genre, like with the original Halloween, they're just doing the gothic, that we know from horror traditions, but just like in a different thing. Like 10 years ago, Michael Myers got sent off to an insane asylum, and he came back, and this is the urban legend. Here in Terrified, we've got several different urban legends and paranormal activity all kind of working in concert, and he kind of takes that to a whole new level When Evil Lurks. And it just sort of made me think differently about the whole concept of what we recognize as gothic haunting in our own neighborhood. In his films, he does it one way, and in Japanese cinema, it's done in a very completely different kind of way, but they all reveal new things about how we think of suburban life, which I guess, all of us, have encountered in some way.
That is fucking fascinating. I never thought of any of these films, like how to taking it to your direct comparison of Halloween to the Gothic, where like, yeah, I mean, wow, there's, this is the castle, and the matron went insane and killed her children, and she lives in the belfry, and like it. Oh my God, that's wow.
Yeah, urban legend is basically just gothic by another name.
Okay. Yeah, that's a perspective I had never thought about, and it kind of just blew my mind, because I always thought of gothic the way Shawn did.
Yeah. The groundskeeper at a high school gets burned alive in a furnace, and he's gonna fuck you up in your dreams.
Oh, good pull.
Awesome.
and it's interesting because so I mean, really it has to do with the entire, I mean, this is like, you could go so broad with this, because people used to live in castles, and there was feudal systems and this and that, and then you get cities and city states, and then you get suburbs from sprawl. And so the things that scare people or the stories that we tell or our imaginations don't really change. They just acclimate to the new structure that is imposed upon them, basically. And I mean, oh my God, it's wow, John, that's that's so awesome.
Because Argentina, you know, has been, I don't want to say it's only been a modern society for a very short period of time, but it had a really fast growth period from like essentially being like a right-wing dictatorship, you know, and then into the, you know, 90s and the 2000s, just being like a mass producer of wine and all, and then reaching back to its roots to like the late 19th century, where it was, you know, basically Buenos Aires was basically considered the Paris of Latin America,
Right.
with poetry by, you know, and literature by Jorge Luis Borges, and artists would go, you know, go there, and it was like just drew so much inspiration, you know, with art and music and everything, just like such like a cosmopolitan place. Then, you know, plunged into, you know, Cold War turmoil, where like nuns were getting hung, you know, out of helicopters, like something out of Scarface, you know, and then now thrust back into a modern society. You know, and I look at that, you know, almost big whiplash, and I'm thinking, yeah, of course this is going to be a national cinema that's going to, you know, produce some scary shit.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. I mean, and this movie, I think one of my initial, this movie was like heralded when it came out in, I think it was 2019. I kept seeing things that like, it's so fucking scary. And I don't think that, I mean, it's definitely tense. It's well made. It is, you know, a horror movie, and it's a good one. But I just feel like it arrived overblown already for me. So I don't know. I've had to watch it a couple times to kind of like get a feel for it. Missy, what is so this was the second time you watched Terrified?
Yes, this was the second time. Um, I saw When Evil Lurks first.
Okay.
I saw it at the theater, at an AMC, a local AMC, when it came out, and loved it. And then looked up to see what else Demián Rugna had done. Found Terrified on Shudder and watched it then. So I watched it a few months ago. Strangely enough, when I watched it today, like I remembered certain things, so I know I watched it, but I had forgotten most of it. Um, and that's not to say it's not a good movie. I mean, I actually like Terrified a lot, but I love When Evil Lurks, and it's kind of, I mean, you can see how he grew as a director. I just watched them both today back to back. So Terrified, and then went straight into When Evil Lurks. Um, but the things this man does with tension are just incredible in both movies.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, this was it's a solid Paranormal Activity kind of movie. Um, it has some great deaths. It's brutal, and it catches you off guard a couple times. Um, I dug it.
And just for the listener, so just when Missy says Paranormal Activity, she doesn't mean it's not a handy
Oh yeah,
cam.
no.
Like just putting that out there, like more as like a plot or like the motivating, you know, than it is a comparison to those movies.
Yes, it's not a comparison to those movies. In fact, I hate those movies.
This movie, I find so. First of all, one of the things about this movie, um, rewatching it because it's kind of vignettes. Both of them are in a way, but like you never really stay. You get these characters that you think is like the main character, and then it's not, and then you move on to somebody else, and it doesn't mean that you don't see the other one again, but it kind of shifts focus. And When Evil Lurks does that a little bit less because there are two characters that are like they kind of pull you through the entire movie. They're there with you at the beginning, they're there with you at the end, and you kind of follow their journey. This shifts perspective a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the sense, so I rewatched this in my hotel room in LA like the day before we saw When Evil Lurks at Beyond Fest. And I remember that was like the third or fourth time I'd seen it, and the first time in a couple of years. And I remember thinking, I get the sense there's a bigger picture that was somehow left out. Like he alludes to it, but it doesn't quite give me enough of that bigger picture for me to feel completely sated by it. Now that's my expectation or whatever, but also I feel like so then I had that in mind watching it the other night, and I was like, is the problem here because it starts with one person and then it goes like so this guy and his wife, the wife ends up dead, he ends up in a police station but being interrogated by these three people that are like basically paranormal investigators, and then they do a really like not the best in my opinion way of like, oh well, but and then it goes back and shows you something that they alluded to in the first story and how it kind of juts up like butts up against it, and then it comes back out of it after a while. But it's weird. I was like, the out of sequenceness of it seems like unnecessary, but then I thought about it a lot and I actually don't think it is, because there's a kid death in Terrified. There's kid deaths in all of his fucking movies. I When he was interviewed at Beyond Fest after When Evil Lurks, I know I said this. I'm pretty sure I said this on the show before, but I fucking love the fact that I forget who it was that interviewed him. Another one of the directors from Satanic Hispanics, because Rugna has a story in that, which I haven't seen that yet. But he said the first fucking question: "The fuck you have against kids, man?" And it's definitely apropos because good God. But the kid death in this, you could start there, but I think he was very smart not to start there. Like, I feel like that might have just been like a lot of people getting up and walking out, where starting the way he does actually brings you into the story in a pretty good way. And even though it feels a little bit clumsy to me, I think it overall works. But it's a good film, but to me now it's been elevated just by being related to When Evil Lurks, for sure. We're gonna jump back and forth, but before I shift it, either of you guys have anything else you want to say about Terrified to build up to When Evil Lurks?
Just that I liked the idea. They point out in the movie that you have to look at things from more than one point of view. Darkness and light, two realities sharing space at the same time. And I like how he approached that, and I feel like we get a bit of that in When Evil Lurks too.
Mm-hmm.
Where everything you see things one way and then shift a little bit, and it kind of alters how the story feels. And I really, really liked how he did that.
Yeah, I agree. John?
Yeah, I like how, and this comes through strongly in both films, but I'll just talk about it in Terrified first. If we were to kind of break horror down into three levels, like terror, fear of what you're not seeing, horror, fear of what you're seeing, and then revulsion, we can kind of file body horror under that. Yeah, he's firing on all three cylinders in this film, and some of the more interesting uses of body horror that I've seen in the last 10 years, outside of Titan and outside of the Olga getting contorted in Guadagnino's Suspiria. Like just the shower scene with the wife getting like smacked repeatedly into the wall, I thought was worthy of some body horror award.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I watched Terrified with my parents, and they're not horror movie people. And just my dad's like, watch what you want to watch. It's fine, So I put it on, and when that came up, he was like, "Oh my God!" Like he was kind of floored. Like he still watched it, so it wasn't like it turned him off. But
You should have watched Species instead.
I really like that though. Terror, what you can't see, horror, what you do see, and revulsion, because he hits all three,
Yes.
all fucking three. And that goes into what Missy was saying about that line about, you need to see things from a different point of view. And like literally, so it's like you look under the bed one way and you don't see it, but then you walk to the foot of the bed and look under it and you see it.
Mhm.
And even that thing, the body horror there, because it's like when they in that scene where they're like, then they look under the foot of the bed, its feet and its head
It's
are both
folded.
facing you. So it's like bent in half. And this just reminded me, I know Terrified was a big, like, I think it was a horror movie creator's horror movie. The way they say jazz is a musician's music or whatever. But Smile, which I'm a big fan of, totally took the bit
Yes.
where the Dr. Albrecht in
twisted-
Terrified runs out and it's like her head is like bent all the way over. Oh God. I really like the characters a lot in Terrified. A lot. And I think another thing that usurped it at first for me was like not being able, like, I like that guy. Like, where's he go? Whatever. And that's like my own expectations. So fuck me. So then he goes and does When Evil Lurks. And I have to ask you both. John, I'm going to start with you. Tell me, now, I want to preface this by saying I looked at things like this before the marvelization of Hollywood, okay? So this is not based on that. Is it, watching these movies this time, the first thing I was struck by, I'm like, so in Terrified, Dr. Albrecht has this thing, it's a very steampunk looking contraption. There's gears and like an orb and like almost like a telescope or whatever. And there's a very fucking similar thing in When Evil Lurks.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, is that the same thing? And I don't think it's the same thing, but it looks related, right?
It looks related. It looks like, it's something that belongs to his universe. And like, if we're to kind of, I guess, think about, I think he was maybe going for less of like, his own kind of universe and something kind of more of a, style of realism with Terrified. And then he just sort of decided to expand on that idea even further with When Evil Lurks.
Yeah.
So I think you could be totally right about that.
Well, so then the other thing, and when I first saw When Evil Lurks, I remember we saw it a couple days later. It hit AMC's and Regal's, it hit major chains. And Anthony from this show saw it. And when we talked about it, he was like, I want to know what the fuck happened. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, one of the first things they say is like, God is dead, or, churches are gone. He's like, I get the feeling that we're in a timeline where like a lot of shit went down in the world and they're just not, they drop you into it, but they don't explain any of it. You're only seeing bits and pieces of it. So then watching When Evil Lurks yesterday, I'm like, wait a minute, because Terrified, it's like, okay, you get one person having a paranormal event and they get called in. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Look, it's not just this house, it's the house across the street and then the house over there. And so it's this like neighborhood that's like infested. So could When Evil Lurks be further down a timeline that actually began in Terrified? Does that make sense?
It's entirely possible. And and the thing is, I like that we don't know what happens and we're just kind of dropped in the midst of it, because it goes, there's the whole film is shrouded in fog, like the farm that they live on, and then the schoolhouse that they retreat to later on. It's just shrouded in fog and you don't know what the hell is out there and what any of this is supposed to mean. And it just allows you to just mentally project your fears on what this could be, like fears stemming from infection or from, scientific research gone wrong, whatever it is, it just kind of lends itself to, the boogeyman that's out there kind of feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
and then
Yeah.
punctuated by like moments like an axe to the face.
Multiple times.
I want to talk about that scene in particular, but Missy, what do you like? How do you feel about this connective tissue between the movies, which I may be inventing, but
No, I think I I did not see the message you had sent me about that until after I rewatched this. I think that they are connected. I did not catch it the first time, um, probably because the first movie I saw was When Evil Lurks, and then
Mhm.
a few days later watched Terrified. Um, but today I just watched them back to back, Terrified first, and went right into When Evil Lurks, and I think they're definitely connected. There are certain sounds early in Terrified that are repeated in When Evil Lurks. Things like banging and and sounds from like drains and stuff like that. Um, and When Evil Lurks has anybody seen Stakeland?
Not in
The
so
No.
movie?
long, I don't remember it.
Okay, this gives me like similar Stakeland. I mean, they're not connected movies. Um, When Evil Lurks or Stakeland, but um, this almost has like a post-apocalyptic kind of feel to it,
Yes.
like that stuff in the middle we don't get, where there are no more churches and God is dead, that whole idea. um we don't get a lot of that, but I think that's the vibe I get from this. That's where we're headed. And that's kind of where When Evil Lurks kind of goes at the end, when we go to like that foggy abandoned school and everything. And it just kind of gave me a similar feeling. Um, but I definitely think they're connected, and it grows as we go, because in When Evil Lurks we get rules. We get
Yes.
rules about, we didn't have any rules in Terrified, but some of the rules we get in this kind of seem to fit, if you think about them.
Sean, didn't somebody ask about that? Didn't somebody ask about the rules?
They
Yeah.
did, and I can't remember. At Beyond Fest, I can't remember the question about the
Oh,
rules. There is a question. The one. Do you remember? You remember what the question was or what he said?
Uh, I don't.
It's interesting because we don't just get rules. The way that they tell us there's rules, the grandmother says, "Oh, it's in a popular song." So we're far enough
mhm.
along a timeline where this is whatever this is, it's culturally anchored, meaning so when the two main characters go to the police, the one cop basically says, "This is the way it works. We send public health takes care of it. So public health has an SOP for dealing with possessed
Right.
people. Like what the fuck, right? And I think it's also important to remember, even though this is bathed in Catholic vernacular, right?
Mhm.
I don't think it's demonic or religious at all, because in Terrified, they make, I forget the exact comment, but I think it's just the intrusion of another plane, right? On this one. So it's not necessarily the devil or demons, it's these other things. And society, you have a lens that you interpret things through, and that's your lens. So they see it through this, God and the devil and this and that. And the whole thing with the churches being dead or whatever. And like Myrta says, we ran a bunk church, my husband and I, for a long time, and then it, basically bit them in the ass. And the whole thing is like, I think it's just showing like religion is this scaffolding that no longer applies, because what we're dealing with is the intrusion of another reality on our own. But they never even, that's what's so great about it. Like you said, John, they don't give you, they just don't, all of this is really inference. They give you pieces and they let you connect it how you want to connect it. And it just makes it so much more effective and thrilling. I mean, the minute it ends, I just want to watch it again.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't want to say like, oh, it's an experimental film, because I always think that's kind of just a cheesy way out. But there's a little more to it than I do think that he's trying to show a new way forward for horror films, like not just like in the region, but just like on a global sense.
Yeah. He definitely has a voice, and this is, as I mentioned earlier, it's similar in that it it's almost vignettes. Terrified is more, feels a little bit more vignetted,
Yeah.
but because of the two main characters, this feels less that way. But you move locations, and there's definitely, like, it could almost be a collection of stories that just share this, this through line, which I guess is any plot really. But well, no, actually no, because when you watch a movie like Die Hard or whatever, like a conventionally written, nothing against Die Hard, but a conventionally written script, Save the Cat,
Mhm.
is that mythology is like, it's one story, and it's like you do this and then you do this, and it's an art in and of itself. But that's not this. This is definitely, like you said, this is a different way forward. And I find it so fulfilling. And I mean, just again, awe. And I mean, it is, when evil, both are brutal, but When Evil Lurks is fucking brutal. Now, I'm going to ask you guys, the scene with the sheep. Okay.
Mhm. I think they're
Miss
goats,
or
Shawn.
goats. Yeah, you're right. It's
Goats.
goats. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're fine.
So, Missy, what do you think? Because I've watched this, I Googled it. I have something I think based on an interview I read with him, but which I'm not saying I'm right, but when you see that scene, I'm like, I don't know what they're seeing, because it's like, okay, Ruiz and his wife are sitting in the house, and they've just dumped the rotten one miles and miles away, 300 kilometers, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
it's later that night, and she starts screaming from outside. He goes outside. She's like, that goat, that goat. And and you see there's all these goats, and they're pointing, and you don't know which one they're pointing at. And something about one of the goats makes them like completely terrified. And then the scene transpires. What do you think? Like, do you guys feel like you were missing something there? Because I'm like, I don't see what I've seen it 3 times now. I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck they're looking at.
I don't think we're supposed to see it.
Because there is a point where it becomes very clear what we're looking at, because every goat
Right.
but one of them leaves, right? But
I don't think at that point we're supposed to see it. I think it's that whole thing about looking at it from a different perspective. Or like in the first movie where he's standing by the bed, he looks under the bed and terrified. He doesn't see the monster. He moves. He sees the feet and sees it bent in half. We can't see it. They see it. And then all the goats run away and we see the goat he's looking at. But I don't think we see what's wrong with it. It just looks like another goat.
I love that. Oh, wow, I love that. Wow, way to bring that in. That's fucking great. John, what do you think?
I'm with Missy on this one for sure. We're really kind of not. We're not meant to see it 100%. I think this is him doing what I think what Ridley Scott did best with Alien, just letting you kind of construct the worst thing in your mind. It's like you're just given information bit by bit, and over explaining and over showing, I think, would have been the wrong way to go here, and he avoided that.
I love that. I'm not even going to say the deduction I made. I'll tell you guys when we stop rolling tape, because I don't know that I don't know that I'm
No, I think you should.
Dude, you totally
Yeah,
need
you should
to.
say it.
okay. So
Yeah,
I
I'll endorse it if it's good.
I don't. It's not even a theory. I don't want to rob any of the magic from the fucking movie. So this is more of like a
I don't
nuts and
think you're going
bolts.
to.
Okay, so
Okay, yeah, I think you're good.
I was like feverishly reading, and there's all these people on Reddit that are like, oh, they mentioned a puma killed a goat at the beginning, and so they see the goats resurrected and they freak out. But I'm like, how would they know like there's nothing that conveys to us that it's a goat. We didn't see a goat at the beginning. And then somebody else is like, if you look at this point, the goat looks like it's standing at the same height as he is, and I didn't see that at all. So I think this is people reaching. No disrespect for these people's theories, whatever. But I read an interview with him with Rugna where he said people love the scene, and he's like, maybe one day I'll love it, but I don't love it. And the reason he doesn't love it is because he's like, it was a really, really hard day. The goats were impossible to work with, and he's like, they're just running all over the place. But so my interpretation was, oh, I wonder if it's just like, this is what we have. We have to work with what we have. So they use basically not getting whatever he might have wanted, and just they use the mood and the music and the tension and the cutting, the editing to create something that actually isn't there. So you're looking for something and you're just not seeing it. But I mean, basically it goes, that just dovetails with what Missy
But it
said.
works for it.
It works for it. It does work for it, because never once, even though I'm like, what am I missing? It's never ever not been an effective scene, because it's a really, really fucking effective scene.
It's a great scene. And if he had showed you something, it might not have worked.
Yeah,
I
good
think
point.
that it works better because we're feeding off her hysteria. She's screaming. He can't see it. We can't see it either. And this movie builds tension through sound through the whole thing,
Yeah. Oh.
because there are so many sounds in this movie, kind of like how Talk to Me did it, that are just so loud. They actually trigger a lot of my anxiety feeds on noise. So I mean, and it probably puts me deeper in the movie. I mean, I'm not complaining about it. I actually love that he does it. But in dealing with, we've got people arguing through the whole movie. Then we've got the autistic kid who's vocalizing through the whole movie, and it's building more and more and more tension. And the phones, when the phones vibrate, and it's feeding our main character's tension too. But it starts in the goat scene. That's the first time you get really hit with it in this, because her hysteria is just amping it up to 11, and you can't see it. And your natural reaction is to be frantic and try to find it.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a natural human reaction until the goat steps forward and, puts it, it says, come on, bring it.
We keep referring to the main character. So Ezequiel Rodriguez plays Pedro.
Thank you.
Demián Solomon plays Jimmy. Their performances, there's not a bad performance in this movie. I mean, they're all stellar in my opinion. What else?
Well, it has one of the best body horror scenes I've seen in a while.
Well, which one?
The beginning with where we're moving Uriel is just one of the grossest things.
Oh.
Like, I don't gross out easily, but this one was, that one got me a bit.
Yeah. It's like, we're not talking like gore. We're just talking like pure bodily grossness.
Oh, and it's like a fat suit. I remember him saying that he still had the fat suit, like he didn't know what to do with it or something like that.
Okay.
But it is a gnarly effect. There's not a moment that I don't believe I'm looking at what they want me to believe I'm looking at.
Right.
Even just like, when, oh God, when they
try to move him.
When they try to move him and just the drippings, or like after they get out and realize they lost him, right? And then Ruiz is like, oh, okay, back in the truck. And as the camera swings around the truck, so he shuts the gate on the pickup truck, and you could just see like where that like mucusy yellow shit was like streaming down the side of the pickup truck.
Right, it's icky, but it gets a reaction. It got a strong reaction from me. The gore, I mean, I love the gore. It has excellent gore in this movie, but it doesn't gross me out. The moving and the bodily fluids and all the oozing, that got me.
Yeah.
So.
And when Ruiz's wife hits him with that fucking axe, man, It's like I almost want to pause it to see the effect, but I'm like, don't pause it. Like it's so well done, that effect. Like you cannot see how they did it if you're just
Mhm.
watching it, again, 3 times. I don't see the effect.
All the deaths are fantastic
Yeah,
in
they
this
really
movie.
are. They really are. Oh, the hammer with Mirta. And so the one question I did remember from Beyond Fest where somebody said, so Mirta makes the point, it's where she's driving with Pedro, she's like, wow, what if like maybe the evil finally found me after all these years using
Mhm.
your brother? And Rugna confirmed that, yeah, everything that happens in the movie is basically the tail end of the evil looking for her the whole
For her.
time. Yeah. So she's like the the motivating factor.
Can we talk about the dog? And
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, and just how I mean, it's coming
Yep.
because
Yes.
at that point, you're immersed enough in whatever kind of mythology that Rugna's trying to create here that what's happening and what's around the corner, and you're seeing, and the cameras, on a low tripod, at that level, you're just waiting for it and it's not coming, and then all of a sudden, bang, it grabs the daughter, and you just think oh God, she's done for here.
I think the way it's because so they mention getting rid of the clothes, right? So you already have that in your head the first time you're seeing it if you're paying attention. And then the dog is sniffing the clothes, right?
Yeah.
So then, and like you say, they keep cutting from them arguing, Pedro and his
Mhm.
ex-wife and her new husband. And then he's telling the kids, the brothers, is it
Santino.
Santino to go get his brother or whatever. So there's like multiple conversation streams and they're very dramatic and it's very loud and it keeps cutting back to that forward shot of her and the dog, the daughter and the dog. And
Mhm.
I think the way, so what's going to happen if you're paying attention, but the way that they get you is it doesn't happen looking straight at it. Then the camera moves around behind
Mhm.
and that's when it fucking happens. And again, I don't see where it's so seamless. It's like she's there and then she's in its mouth. It's so well done. Oh my God.
Right,
Ah,
like she's hugging the dog and then it's like eating her head,
ah,
and it's coming, and it's super fucking satisfying.
man.
It's such a cool scene, and you know and it doesn't happen quickly. They keep cutting back to the dog and he's like shaking her and she's all limp and
Yeah.
floppy and like she's dead. She's dead. And but this demon virus or whatever is like they come they're not zombies ish, but I mean they come back.
Well, it's funny. She comes back, she looks unscathed. Now, when the
Yeah, she
mother
looks
comes
fine.
back, she looks all fucked up, right? Because being hit by the truck or whatever. So there's a deviation there, not pointing it out as a flaw whatsoever.
Yeah, because the
Who
little
knows?
girl should be like mauled and she looks fine.
I love that scene where she comes back and she's like, Papa's gonna kill you or whatever. And then like when it happens, when the stepdad like peels his fucking face off of the fucking airbag and opens his
Airbag.
eyes, he just sees her like dancing in circles, like all happy.
Hmm.
Oh my God, it's so fucked up.
Yeah, just squished mommy with the truck against the garage door.
Oh my God.
Well, and it's a really interesting. Usually, I don't usually like possession movies. They just end up being boring. And in my opinion, two of the best movies this year have pretty much been possession stories with a different take. Um, and I really liked the idea that like there's one point where they talk about the rotten being trapped inside the other son,
Right.
Jair, the
Yes.
Yeah,
autistic
yeah.
kid, and the whole idea that um, these things can't understand their minds and it can't escape. So then you see it like bending his hands, trying to
Yeah.
figure out like how the person works.
They can't untie the knot, is what Mirta says.
Yeah, they can't untie the knot.
And then they do,
And at
right?
one point it does.
Yeah,
Right.
because he
'cause
walks
there's
in, Grandma, can you make me something to eat? He's like totally fucking normal. And, she's like,
Right.
uh-oh.
Mhm.
Yeah, and she knows because, I mean, he could barely speak.
What a fucking ending, too. What an ending. That I just,
Both movies have pretty hardcore endings.
Yeah, it seemed like I kind of got Sean. I kind of got the sense that a lot of people in the theater were not really that felt a little unsatisfied with the ending. I thought the ending was just fine.
I like the ending.
it was one of those where I'm like, end here, and like he did it, where it's like you get the one scream,
Yes.
Mhm.
and then the next one there's no fucking sound. I was like, yes, you fucking. It was like
Did it?
the way I felt about Quiet Place, totally different kind of movie, but like
Yeah.
it does this thing at the end, and I was like, stop there. And 9 out of 10 movies are not going to stop there, and it does. And
No.
you're like, yes, oh my God, yes,
There,
thank you.
no, I'm with you. There's so many movies where I thought, like, if the director has guts, he'll just end it here
Mhm.
because like it's such a ballsy move to do it, and they don't do it.
Yep,
Here they did. Here he did it.
he
So,
did it.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, I agree.
so fucking effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we could keep talking. There's so much. I'll watch it again, and I'll be like, oh, this or that. Anything, John? Anything else you want to say?
It put me off ice cream for a while.
So have you? So I have never even heard of apple ice cream before.
No, me neither. And it kind of sounded gross.
I mean, I have apple like gelato. It's like green apple. Gelato.
Like sour.
Yeah, sour apple. Yeah, kind of like sour. Okay. It's kind of like sour apple Jolly Rancher.
Okay,
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not as bad as you think.
after this movie at Beyond Fest, we walked back out. I think, John, you were still there, I think. We were standing, waiting to go back in for VHS 85. And they came out, I'm assuming it was sponsored by the film or Beyond Fest, and they handed out little cups of fucking apple ice cream.
That's cool.
And I passed, and I shouldn't have. I kicked myself. I was like,
oh, you should have tried it just in the spirit of the thing.
It was all right.
You had it?
Yeah, I had it. It was
okay.
It was all right.
Oh man, I think I had a beer or something, and I was like, it's not going to go well with the beer, so whatever. Closing thoughts? Anything, Missy? Anything we didn't get to?
No, I would just recommend that if people are going to watch both, watch Terrified first, then watch When Evil Lurks. Because if you watch them in reverse, which is how I saw them initially, I mean, they're both great movies, but When Evil Lurks is cranked up to 11, and then when you hit Terrified, it feels like it slows down. If you watch Terrified first, it just keeps building momentum.
My final thought is that I think that I just out of curiosity I looked up, those, see what shows up on those top 10 Latin American horror film lists. And you don't get Terrified on there. You don't get When Evil Lurks. I mean, it's too soon for When Evil Lurks anyway. So I mean, you get La Llorona, on there, of course. That's fine, fair enough. I give another 2 years, and you're going to see When Evil Lurks on there for sure, if not 1 year.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, this is fairly fresh because I was watching it like I got to buy this on DVD or on Blu-ray, and there's not even been an announcement yet, because it just hit Shudder in what I guess the end of October. So really, it's only been a month and a half or whatever. Would you guys both say you feel like? Oh, and let me preface this by saying, in that interview I read, he also said originally he was going to do a remake of Terrified, and COVID got in the way. So that's when he shifted focus.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel like I did remember here, and I don't remember if it was like an American remake or if it was just he wanted to, almost like Last Shift in Malum, where it's like the director's like, well, I have
Okay.
more money now, so I'm going to do more like, what I actually wanted to do, which you can see. I think he did a great job with Terrified, but I definitely see places where I'm like, I'll bet he could blow that up now, to
Mhm.
a bigger spectacle. But do you guys both get a sense that what starts in Terrified, not story-wise, but like just craft-wise, there's like just an exponential leap from Terrified to When Evil Lurks.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
I'm really excited. I want so many more movies from Demián Rugna. Like I just,
Yes.
man, whenever somebody makes that big of a leap, uh, you know, and they can either be whether or not these are actually connected. I mean, David Lynch, when you look at things a certain way, like when people first get into David Lynch, sometimes they think, or like pre-internet when I was into Lynch, I remember loving Twin Peaks as I watched it as it aired, and then like finding Blue Velvet, like, is this connected? Fire, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's not. It's just he explores similar themes. And then you can see that, obviously, like Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive, in a lot of ways, he made the same movie again. Um, but then also, like Mulholland Drive started out as a TV script. It was originally going to be Audrey Horne moves to Hollywood. So it's not connected, but it originally was. So, in other words, like whether or not these are connected or he's just exploring similar themes or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Rugna definitely leaves things open like Lynch, where it's like you could put whatever the fuck you want on it, just watch it, watch it and think about it. And I think these are both movies that are great for people that like to watch horror movies and fucking think about them. Because those are my favorite kind
Mhm.
of horror movies. Those are the ones where it's like, at the end of the day, it's why we do this. It's
Mhm.
fine. I love a good slasher movie, but if everything was just slashers, the conversation would dry up pretty quick because it'd be like, oh, what about that kill? What about that kill? I mean, it's great, but whatever. So, and if every movie was Species, well, 3 a.m. Skinamax, I might actually go watch Species right now. Oh.
I'm gonna look up Cargo and probably watch that tonight.
So, John, what's next? What's next for you? So you just dropped a new episode of this movie, Save My Life. I believe you mentioned last time are you done with the readings for
For movie made in Los Angeles.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we just had one in Laguna Beach. We're done for the moment. I'll let you know if there's going to be some more in the New Year's. The New Year's is busy, busy, busy. I've got some major life-changing events going on in February, and then starting teaching again, and then starting not one but two new book projects, a big one and a small one.
Nice.
So, that's going to take up a lot of my time. But all I can say right now is that yeah, response to movie made Los Angeles has been wonderful, and I think hopefully it's just going to keep growing and growing in the new year. Also want to say it's not out yet, but I've actually got a new podcast coming out. Probably by the end of this year will be our pilot episode. And then we're going to do some more. It's me and two other professors, and we all specialize in historical films that look at real life historical events and historical people. And it's a lot of what our writing and teaching and a lot of our scholarly work has been focused on throughout our careers. It's called Moving Histories, and our first episode is on Ridley Scott's Napoleon. So that'll be not 100% sure when that first episode is going to drop. Hopefully it'll be by the end of the year, but maybe early January. We'll see. I'll keep an eye on my Instagram, at John Trafton Film, and you'll see when it drops.
Right on. That's good news.
Okay.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds wicked.
All right. Well, then for the Horror Vision horror podcast, I'm Shawn.
I'm John.
And I'm Missy.
And just stay the fuck away from goats altogether.
pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus, MV20, soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI, Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abra Mellon Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive?
The world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure? Murder. From the twisted mind of Shawn C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadow Play Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus. Available where books are sold.